Hello, my name is Antwune Gray. I'm VP of Technical Operations here at NetX Information System. And today we will be walking through the SimpleHelp QuickStart. Now, as a note, the steps are actually laid out in the PowerPoint. However, the intention here is to provide some context to some of the screenshots and some of the steps that are listed in the PowerPoint. So here we go. NetX Information Systems is a global distributor for the SimpleHelp suite of solutions. Our contact information is on the screen. Please contact us for proof of concepts, installation assistance, troubleshooting, as well as additional license sales. I'll show this slide again at the end of the tutorial. Documentation for SimpleHelp can be found at the URL shown on the screen. Some of the most important documentation pieces would be the technician guide, which would assist or guide the technical person in the usage of the SimpleHelp suite of solutions. Again, the tool is very, very simple to use, but to apply more context to some of the fields and options, the technician guide is a great place to start. The administrator guide will assist in setup and configure of the SimpleHelp server. You can use that guide in addition to this particular tutorial. However, in this tutorial, most of the information you're going to need will be presented to you. The remote management guide will assist you in understanding how to create alerts and to run tools remotely. On the netxinc.com/SimpleHelp website, there is also a video demonstration of the SimpleHelp tool as well as how to create alerts. Therefore, the remote management guide may not be necessary. However, it's good to know where you can access that particular guide. Okay, so let's continue on. The SimpleHelp architecture is very flexible. You can actually install the solution in your DMZ, internal network, as well as your preferred cloud provider. You would just simply require in your cloud provider, require the appropriate virtual machine. In your internal network, this can be obviously a virtual machine or a physical. We certainly recommend virtual. This is a self-hosted solution. It is not a SaaS or cloud-based solution, so you would need to perform some installation steps. So, once you have run the installation of the SimpleHelp tool, you would allow the system to run maybe about 5 minutes and then launch your web browser and enter the IP address of your SimpleHelp server. Once you launch that web browser and you plug in the IP address /welcome, you will be presented with this web page that you see here. And from here, you go ahead and click the Start New Server button. To note, if this is an upgrade or migration, you would just simply follow the steps listed in the next button there. Okay. So once you've specified that this is a new installation, you will be redirected to a web page that looks very similar to what you see on the screen. So number 3 says to go ahead and download your technician console. This can be installed directly on the server if you like, or on your admin workstation. So to do so, you click the Open Technician page and then click the Download SimpleHelp Technician. What that will do then is auto-detect the operating system and install the appropriate version of the SimpleHelp Technician console. You can also click the All Downloads button that's listed right under Download SimpleHelp Technician to grab the online as well as offline installation binaries if you want to use some sort of file copy or something of that nature to get those binaries out to additional technicians in the environment. It is also important to note that the online version of the SimpleHelp Technician does not require an install. This is more of a portable executable that you can just simply double click and run to launch the Technician console. However, if you are looking to integrate into third-party management solutions and you want to be able to launch a remote control session from within that third-party solution, then you would need to ensure that you have the Technician console installed. So once you've downloaded the appropriate version, you go ahead and launch the SimpleHelp console. You'll be presented with a window where you would install your license. So you may have received the license via automated email directly from a NetX sales team personnel. You would go ahead and browse out to where you save that license file and install that license file. Once you've installed your license file, you'll be then presented with a dialog to set up the password for the SimpleHelp admin. The SimpleHelp admin is the administrative account of SimpleHelp, and you need to protect this particular password. Now, if you did not create a password and you close out the console, the next time the console is launched, you will be presented with this dialog again. So I would recommend setting up a password initially, because if you go through and you perform all of your configurations and you start to install agents, anyone who has access to the console and launches the console would then be logged in as a SimpleHelp administrator and have full rights to every device within the platform. So once you've provided the password, then you would go ahead and click let's back up. You'd go ahead and click the Get Started button, which would then launch you into the main console. You'll be presented with a message, as you can see from the yellow arrow, that specifies that the server configuration has not been backed up. That's fine. If we're going to move forward with the configurations at this time, you just go ahead and click the Dismiss button, because we will back up the configurations once we have set up network, set up the groups and things of that nature. Point to note: anytime you make any major configuration changes to the SimpleHelp tool, you would want to go ahead and create a new backup, as obviously that information is saved as a part of your backup. It makes recovery a lot simpler. At that point, if you need to recover your server, you just simply reinstall the software. You point to your backup of the configurations, and all of your configurations will then be restored. So that is the basic installation of the SimpleHelp server. Now we'll go through some basic configuration options. These are the main options just to get you up and running. In the guides, there are some more advanced configurations you may want to consider. But again, the purpose of this tutorial is to ensure that you have your system installed and ensure that you have the major components of the SimpleHelp server configured as per your requirements. So we'll focus on the major items that we see here on the screen. So first, let's take a look at network settings. In order to configure your SimpleHelp server, all those configurations will be actually located on the administration tab. So within the administration tab, you're going to find the network settings icon. Once you click on that, it will present you with a interface that represents what we see here. In the first dialog box, I recommend that you have an external resolvable DNS name that we enter into this box. The reason for the external resolvable DNS name is to allow you the ability to manage systems that are connected over the network. Now, with this external resolvable DNS name, we will also configure all of our agents to talk to this particular name, so that if a system which starts out in the environment then moves to an external location, you will still have connectivity to that particular system. We also have the ability to customize our ports. Now, the system will install with both port 80 and 443 available. However, you can delete one or both of these particular ports, or you can add in your own custom port. We have many customers who actually will use a custom port they enter that port here, and they then can listen to that traffic using some sort of network device that separates that traffic from any traffic that may look like web-based traffic. Keep in mind, if you use a custom port, you need to add that custom port to the URL that you have in the external resolvable DNS name that we've listed in the top box here. The next item we would configure would be our login security. Now, this is not a requirement. If you are not looking to integrate with Active Directory, you just want to have your technicians created within the system that are not connected to any type of authentication repository, then you can do so. You can actually skip this particular portion. But to ease administrative overhead, integrating with Active Directory and then selecting a group from Active Directory to allow access to the SimpleHelp tool, obviously makes things a lot easier for you. So in order to integrate into Active Directory, we just simply check the box to enable LDAP-based authentication. You'd enter your domain namespace, or you can enter a specific server or IP address. The advantage of entering your domain name is obviously, if a particular server goes down that you've connected to, your Active Directory connection will not be broken. You enter an account that has the ability to browse or search AD. Authentication mechanism is going to be simple unless we're using SASL. You check the box to specify that this is a Microsoft Active Directory server. If not, then there will be some additional fields that you can configure for LDAP repositories as well. You click the box or the button to test your connection. You specify an account that you want to verify, and it will then come back pass or fail. The next step then is to create our group-based authentication. Again, the advantage of a group-based authentication is we can simply connect to an Active Directory group, and we can add users to that particular group and remove users from that particular group to make administration of access to SimpleHelp a lot easier. Okay, so the first step would be to go ahead and click the green plus sign at the bottom. This will then add a new group. You can specify the name of that group. My recommendation is that this group name actually matches the name of the group within Active Directory, but it is not a requirement. This is simply a label. You then check the box to allow authenticated logins. And again, this is specific for Active Directory or your LDAP based group. If this is not going to be a group that is connected to LDAP, then you leave this box deselected. The groups will still be required in order to specify permissions for technicians that you manually create within the system. So we need to go through this particular process anyways. The difference is whether we check or deselect that box. And then the group host name alias. Generally, this is optional. If we do not override this with something specific to our organization, then it will just be presented as the name of the server. No big deal in most cases. Okay. So the next item that we need to configure as far as group-based authentication is concerned is to then navigate over to the Authentication tab, check the box for LDAP authentication, select the Browse button, which is represented by the magnifying glass here, and look for the appropriate base DN. Once you've done so, you can select the radio button for group configuration, and then down below you have the Select Groups button. You can go ahead and click that button. It'll then browse the appropriate location within Active Directory, and you can select your groups. However, if you choose to use an LDAP query, you can do so by simply selecting the radio button next to Advanced Configuration and plug in the appropriate LDAP query. After completing those items, you click the Test Technician Login, specify the username and password of a user that is in the group that you've connected to, and you should receive a pass or fail. If you receive a pass, then it's safe to move on to the next option. These other configuration items here are detailed in the guides, the administrative guides. However, while we're here, I do recommend that you check the box to require a one-time passcode to be sent to technicians via email. This then enables two-factor authentication, so your technicians will specify their Active Directory username and password. They will be emailed a passcode based on the email address that is listed in Active Directory. They then specify that passcode and they are then allowed into the system. If two-factor authentication is not a high priority, then you can simply leave that box deselected and move on to the next step. I won't go deep into permissions or session restrictions, but I do want to point out that on the permissions tab, you have the ability to allow or deny the ability to perform specific functions by simply checking or deselecting boxes. On the session limits, you have the ability to specify how many technicians within a group can launch a remote control session and how many sessions that particular technician a specific technician can launch. This is not only for remote access where an agent is actually installed and the manufacturer of the agent calls this a remote access service. So when you see that in documentation, it is the actual agent. Or a remote support session. A remote support session is basically where we have the ability to send an invite to an end user to join a support queue, where then the technician can then manage that particular resource, or you can direct them to your web portal page. There's a customer link there where they then have the ability to join a support queue. These are generally going to be systems that don't have an agent installed. Back up once more, I'm sorry. You also have the ability to specify which machines or group of machines a particular group of technicians will have access to by simply migrating or selecting the machine filters button and creating a filter to show or hide specific groups of machines. On the SimpleHelp Technicians account, here's where we have the ability to create an account that does not live in SimpleHelp. That does not live within Active Directory, or maybe you have connected to an Active Directory group that has multiple users, but there's only a few users within that group that you want to actually give access to SimpleHelp. You can do so then by, if I back up a second, deselecting the checkbox to allow group-based authentication. But we want to take advantage of the authentication mechanism, so at that point then you come to your technician item, add in the technician username, their email address, as well as their display name. If this is an Active Directory account, we would deselect the allow technician to log in with the SimpleHelp password. If it is an account that would only reside within SimpleHelp, then we'd obviously check that box and then set the password. The next tab then would be the Groups tab, where we would select the previously created group. Although not required, it is recommended to configure your email settings. This then allows your SimpleHelp server to send email based on alerts that have triggered, based on server events that have triggered, as well as to send the email passcode for two-factor authentication. So this is pretty straightforward. You check the box to enable your email configuration. You specify your SMTP server host name, the appropriate port, username and password if required by your specific system, so you might want to check with the administrator, the sending email address, as well as you would specify the sending name. Recommendation would be your company help desk or support server or something of that nature. If certificates are required, you go ahead and click the button to install the appropriate certificates, and check the box then to use TLS if required, and then test connections. As promised, our contact information has been made available again. So if you have any questions or need any assistance with configuring your SimpleHelp server or the purchase of additional licenses, or just some questions, please contact us at the information displayed on the screen. Thank you and have a great day.